On October 14, 1947, the Bell X-1 rocket plane, also known as the Glamorous Glennis, was the first plane to break the sound barrier, piloted by Chuck Yeager. One advancement in aerospace technology that led to the very first supersonic flight was the Wright brothers' plane in 1903, and the creation of the first jet engine in 1930. Along with the jet engine came the first jet plane, called the Heinkel He 178, which flew on August 27, 1939. What also happened in 1947 was Howard Hughes' H-4 Hercules, aka the Spruce Goose. The Spruce Goose was a wooden flying boat that flew 70 feet in the air for 1 mile at 80 miles per hour. Although it had a successful flight, it never made it to mass production due to stability concerns. The first supersonic flight took place on the same year as the beginning of the Cold War. During the beginning of the Cold War, the USSR takes territories in Germany, while the US is making efforts to stop communism, like through the National Security Act of 1947. The National Security Act of 1947 created the CIA. The CIA was responsible for secretive operations in foreign nations, and also created tension between the USSR and the United States. The X-1 paved the way for an entire series of airplanes, X-2 to X-15, going from Mach 1 in 1947 to Mach 5.8 in 1959, which more than quintupled the speed from its first flight. The research done with the supersonic flights has helped to develop the technology for the Apollo flights, which take place 8 years from the last supersonic flight in 1959.
The Bell XS-1 was a joint project between U.S. Army Air Forces, the U.S. Air Force, and the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, which later became NASA. The plane was built by Bell Aircraft, and it was test piloted by Chuck Yeager. Because the Bell X-1 was designed purely for aviation research and not for production, it used a wing thickness of 8%, which was hard to manufacture, as opposed to typical commercial aircraft which used around 15 to 18% wing thickness. The engine of the Bell XS-1 consisted of 4 different cylinders, each with 1,500 pounds of thrust, meaning that there was a maximum thrust of 6,000 pounds. Because of this, the plane only had a flight time of around 2.5 minutes. In order to test the Bell X-1, a Boeing B-29 was used as a mothership to carry the Bell X-1 to an optimum starting height of around 25,000 feet for testing. Flying it, Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier on their 50th test flight and reached Mach 1.06 at about 361 meters per second, which means it hit a peak speed of around 807 miles per hour. The Bell X-1 research project was kept a secret for 2 months before it was eventually released to the public. There was a newspaper about the X-1 Bell plane reaching over 900 miles per hour in their test flight, published in 1948 by the Los Angeles Examiner. President Harry S. Truman honored Larry Bell of Bell Aircraft and John Stack of the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics at the White House for their contribution to the first supersonic flight. The Bell X-1 flight now resides in the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, where you can visit it today.